All right, sweet. Thanks for tuning in. This is going to be the second part of the fifth unit. And what I want to talk about is something we haven't talked about before. It's really CRUD. Now, this is really an unfortunate acronym. What it stands for is Create, Replace, Update, Delete. Now, create is otherwise known as write, when you write something in a database for the first time. Now, read is read, right? Where you read something. Sorry, I said replace. I really meant read. Update is when you change something that's already there, and delete is when you take it out of the database entirely. So what I have is I have a table here called website test, and that's a little different from your main test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose that table, and then I'm going to write to it. Now, at the top of this, you can see that the same template applies here, where I'm going to supply a role R and my app ID, and the status change callback, and then I'm going to run test API here. But some different things are going to happen. So let's bring out the show CRUD example, and you can see already that there's some new things here. Like it is going to recognize me and be all friendly. But you can see that we have a few new things. Like we have a text field, and then we have a button. So this week you finally get access to a button, and you finally get access to a hyperlink. What I have to say though is that the button and the hyperlink, those are big things. And you guys need to learn kind of how they are done professionally, and you need to know holistically how they work. So you can see that these have different IDs. That's the key value, that's the attribute, the sort. This will be partition key that we'll probably put in here, and then there'll be the sort key, and then here's a little bit of data that we're going to put in there as well. And then I have a button there that will run the that's called put this, and this is get this. So we're going to look something up. This is the update where I'm going to look something up, then change it, and then there's going to be the delete this where I'm going to delete that information. Now what's cool about this code, and this is all right up here, is that we're going to go ahead and make sure that we're logged into Facebook first up in this first script element. And the stuff that we've already talked about, which is quite a lot. And then I have a second script element, which is, I have two scripts. One is, the authentication piece, which gives us this. And then the second script is where, it looks pretty familiar. I'm actually going to do some direct DynamoDB interactions. Now, what's cool about those interactions, and let's go down, and you can see I've got my Facebook user ID, and I've got my app ID and my role arm, and is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, the minute that the page loads, go ahead and attach this function to the put this button, and then go ahead and attach this function to the get this button, and then go ahead and attach this function to the update this button, and the same thing, apply this bit of code to the delete this button. So the minute that the page loads, it's going to load up the HTML at the top here, right? And then it's going to apply the interactive feature to it once it loads. So that's what's happening inside of the second script tag right down here, just behind the scenes. So whenever you guys go to a website and you see like a bunch of different script tags right there, that means that different features are built in for each script. Now, some things that are happening here is I'm going to set up my Dynamo connection, very, very familiar looking. And then I'm going to set up my document client, right? And then I'm going to grab three pieces of data. I'm going to grab whatever's in the key value input box, which is there. And then I'm going to grab whatever's in the attribute text box, which is there. And then I'm going to grab whatever's in the value text box. my bad. That's going to change. Sorry, I went to a different page. Okay, so that's going to grab whatever is in the value text. Now, I'm going to prove to myself that they have initialized correctly with a call to the console. And then I'm going to load it up using the name of the table that I want to write to, which is website test. And then I want to load it up, so I want to specify the item ID, which is the partition key, the key text. And then I want to load up attribute 1. So I have item ID and attribute 1. Those are the columns within a database. Now I can make more columns if I wish, per database call, per update, which is cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the put feature. And I'm going to take whatever the result data is and I'm going to log it to the console. Now a very similar thing is going to get done with the get this button. We're going to run the get function. And for the update feature, we're going to run the update on the .client. Okay, so they're all very similar. There are some different parameter sets for every one, which I'll let you, we'll talk about that in a different one. And then for the delete button, we're going to do the delete feature against the document client. Okay, and so there's going to be, the specification of the the table, the specification of the key, maybe attribute names that we're going to use, maybe some values. And so when we have this work, I can see that I'm already sort of logged in, successful login for Steph and Bun. So why don't we say this is my new key. Okay, and then the attribute is going to be see this. And actually, why don't we just go attribute 1, because we already know that attribute 1 is there. So we'll just write something to attribute 1. And then my value is do you see this? And I'm going to go ahead and put that. Now you can see that my key values have been written here so that it appears to have been constructed correctly. And then I might as well go to the website test where I have that done. And I say, do you see this? Can you feel it? Do you see this? My new key. Okay, great. So that makes me feel good because my ARN is working.
Say you didn't put attribute 1, what would it have done?
Let's just fool around with this. Hi there at 2. And let's create a new and just the way that it's constructed, this is still going to get pushed into attribute 1. And that's just because of the way that put has been made. And I'll just hope I'm not giving you a headache here, but that's just because I'm always going to take whatever is in val text and feed that into attribute 1. So now the way to get around that is when you get into update, we'll fool around with update, where update has the freedom to add another column. I appreciate that. It's a great question. He asked me what would happen if I supplied an attribute here that was not attribute 1, right? And what we said is that everything with the way the code is configured, everything writes to attribute 1 for now. Now I want to get, I'm going to get based on this. And let me empty my console out. When I get, it's going to grab some stuff back. Now this is a round trip to the cloud, which I must say is pretty fast, right? Amazon has got you covered in terms of the speed, security, reliability piece. It's good. It's a good thing. And you can see that that is in fact what is there. So you have some integrity. Now why don't I add a new attribute here? I'll say, and I'll update this. And you can see that it adds sort of a new attribute right here. Now the way that Dynamo likes to work is it does not have the static schema as you would have in a MySQL or a relational disk-based database. This is a NoSQL, so you can add an almost infinite number of attributes per row, which is good. So you can make kind of lists of data for every row, and that's what's called a key value pair. So every row looks kind of like like this. And let's try to edit. So that row has this dynamic array of attributes there. Very simple. And then why don't we go ahead, now that you know it's there, let's refresh. Let's do a get one more time, just to fully explore. Let's get, and you can see that that new stuff is there. And do you see this goes into the new attribute? And then why don't we delete? Good. And so this item should disappear. Good. So we know that our CRUD is working well. We got good CRUD, okay? And that's good for us because, and really I just wanted this code to be an extremely generic, almost identityless, detailless implementation so that you guys can use it wherever you see fit. One is the important part, and sorry to scroll this way, is the status change callback, which certifies that if you're connected, then reestablish the configuration credentials and then go ahead and do your cloud interaction. And then you have the freedom to do a create, read, update, delete, or a CRUD on the database, which is similar to a query. Doesn't this look a lot like the query? But it's not a query. It's a single unit-based interaction where there's always going to be one item. You're either going to put one item or you're going to get one item. Why don't we get test val 9? You're going to get one item. Oh, you know what? Let's get an attribute. One right there. And that queries that one item. So you might ask yourself, okay, if all I want to do is edit, update, delete, or add one item, should I use the query? Well, the query is not effective for putting data into the database. The query gets a variable, unlimited amount of information from the database. But what if I just wanted to create one item at a time? Or what if I wanted to grab an item and edit it? Or what if I wanted to grab an item and then add, append a, append a column? That might be of interest to you. So that's what we call CRUD. It's very basic. It's very transactional. And now you have the ability to do that. So as you go through, just know that you've got some new tools, one of which being the persistent authentication from Facebook, and then the second being the CRUD, which is going to work flawlessly simply because you have that IAM role, which I guess I could review here, because your IAM is so effective that you don't need to change IAM whatsoever. Now, just to be sure, I have a CSU 311. That's a different role here. But you can see that things are pretty much the same thing. I just did the same policy on my website test as I did on my main test. There's virtually no ARN change or IAM change. So what I do have to say is that folks, I had a young woman come up to me who already had cracked the query and she was moving on to the next thing and she just wanted to fool around with it and she just took this file of mine, here, the CRUD file, and she put it up in her cloud in S3 and then she ran it and it was perfect and she said, is this what you're interested in? I said, yeah, that's there. You've done the hard work. You might as well take the benefit of having hacked Dynamo. So now things may be on a downhill trajectory in terms of difficulty. Let's face it, IAM is not trivial. And what I want to say is for some of you who are headed in security careers, IAM is a very good example of role-based access control that most cloud platforms need to create so that it governs the access on assets. Kerberos was the first one to kind of establish this, and now what you want to do is you might ask the question, well, is the security on the cloud configured inside of the application, or is it configured inside of the identity and access management? And really it's a combination. But if you are a security auditor, should you go to IAM to audit the app first? And really IAM is the heart of security for the application. It will be difficult for non-developers to audit applications in order to see if the application successfully implements various business policy and business rules. The rules are perhaps best expressed through IAM. And so for auditors, of which we produce many, the IAM is a perfect place to look at that. And you might ask the question, well, does the IAM govern, put, get, delete, query, update, and put, the CRUD piece? And the answer is yeah. All of those freedoms were created last week. So as you move forward into your CRUD piece, and I laugh because it sounds so funny, but as you move forward into your CRUD piece, with get, put, update, delete, your IAM changes not at all. So it would not surprise me if this week you're cruising versus last week you were grappling. You were jiu-jitsu last week. This week you're a skateboarder, right? Cruising. So with that, I want to just, shorten up the discussion and say that may well be everything that we discussed this week. But I just want to quickly roll through what we did. We kind of wrapped up the fourth unit by saying that you should check out the dynamic divs piece and how we apply the week 3 JavaScript nodes to your query. And then we moved pretty readily into the Facebook login piece, where we took code from Facebook and we adapted it to our own Amazon. And what we did here is we said, well, we're going to look for a status callback, and if we get a response of type connected, we can go ahead. We then said, let's go ahead and trigger a query right after we see that our response is connected. Go ahead and add your web identity credentials, and then go ahead with your query and see what happens. Now within that query, we of course are showing off the wonderful JavaScript nodes, right? So, and then we began to think about how to add links, which are kind of a big deal in terms of moving data back and forth around the site. So we took links pretty reverently. Then we moved into getting links to work. Now, it would be kind of cool for you guys to not have a link that went nowhere, such as this, that goes to Arrival link, which is the simplest web page ever created, right? Arrival link is this page where nothing happens. It's a Winchester Mystery House. It's kind of an empty staircase for Southern Californians, for Winchester Mystery House, the staircase to nowhere. This is a Winchester Mystery House link. But why don't you make that link to your CRUD page, right, where you show the CRUD. And now on Show CRUD, right, you're going to do CRUD. You're going to have the ability to maybe work with somebody's account, or maybe buy something, or do something truly interactive. So you have all that power now, by the time you finish this video. And so it'll be fun for you to, hack around a little bit. Now let me say this. I'm enjoying the captive audience here, but I think that students are experimenting with a couple of different developer behaviors. One is that they are kind of copy-pasting stuff. They have a ton of code. Let's just copy-paste it. You can never present the copy-pasted code for a final project. Does that make sense? The copy-pasted code is good in that it can show you a result. Something will happen if you use the copy-pasted. However, you won't be able to harness it unless you're kind of building it on your own. And the right way to do the copy-pasted code is to code a little bit, see what happens. hold a little bit more, see what changes. So, that's why these kind of files are built this way, so that you'll I start with one file, then I add a layer to it, then I add another layer to it, and then eventually I get to the part 4. I began with test keys, the show output, and then I which is a demo from a prior week, and then I kind of move upward. So it's kind of good to walk through each one, taking note of the transformation as you take place. Now, here's one thing I can say about that is, this is code that I did not develop. I try hard to, accommodate Facebook. They're nice people, or they're assigned to be nice. They're required to be nice. But here, I'm just saying, look, this is just code that Facebook provides to help us navigate their API, right, as they should. And I'm going to develop my stuff on top of that. So maybe what you do is you grab the sample Facebook login from GitHub, and then you begin to add in the missing pieces, such as the trigger query, so that you have a sense of doing authentic work. The one thing that won't benefit you guys is, after you copy and paste, you might not know quite what happened. Therefore, you're not able to use the new stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. So for your own ego development, start small and then add little bits. Like, instead of the test API, eliminate that, add that, and then see what happens, right? Try to take stock. But you can kind of use my videos to kind of walk through and add, as you go, and that way you'll get a first-rate education. Even if you're on your own, you're never really without one-on-one tutelage. So with that, have a good run. Don't forget to subscribe.